So how would the TV version of Lucifer differ if Neil Gaiman was the creative mastermind behind it? Well, his relationship with Maze would be totally different, and Tom Ellis would likely not be Mr. Morningstar. Lucy was never meant to be tall, dark, and handsome.
I'm Lucifer bloody Morningstar!
In fact, a younger, slender David Bowie was the main inspiration behind the demon in the comics. Neil revealed that he imagined Lucifer as a junkie angel, and Bowie was the closest thing to a reference point that he and his collaborators could find. Heck, even all the original sketches look a whole lot like him. While Tom looks absolutely nothing like the rocker once known as Ziggy Stardust, he did reveal that the show intentionally made Lucifer a Bowie fan as an homage to the origins. Still, you can't help but think that Neil might have chosen someone else for the part if he'd been in charge. Maybe even an actor like Bill Skarsgård, who kinda gives you the same sort of vibes as Bowie. That being said, Neil's more than delighted with Gwendolyn Christie's casting as the character in the upcoming Sandman TV show, because he never said that Lucifer had to be a male, and she definitely has a unique look that stands out. Look, there's absolutely nothing wrong with Tom as a Lucy because he's devilishly brilliant in this role, but the honest truth is he doesn't look like the original creation at all. Though, Neil puts that down to the fact that the Lucifer show is inspired by the DC character, not actually based on him. And that's probably something else he would change if given the chance. Because remember, Lucifer is actually part of the DC universe. He's interacted with a host of other comic book heroes and villains throughout the years, but he's largely been seen on the outskirts in the TV show. Sure, he did make an unexpected cameo appearance in the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, but he's been largely isolated in his own corner. But why though? Well, the answer to this, burning question is quite simple really. It's something that plagues most comic book shows. Rights issues. Basically, Lucifer can only use some DC characters but not others on the show, even though they may or may not live in the same universe. It's such a complex thing that it does most of our heads in just thinking about it, but basically it would be considered normal to see Lucy interact with the likes of Batman or even Superman on a regular basis. And hey, if Neil had his way, maybe that's exactly what we'd see. Also, you just know that Lucifer would be OP in this version. While the devilish being certainly has a flair for the dramatic and shows off an impressive range of hellish power, he's not quite in the same league as his comic book counterpart. Because in the DC universe, Lucifer is one of the most powerful beings around. And we're not just talking about physique here, but in terms of the real damage he can inflict.
It's more like a gift from God, really.
He could put the smack down on powerhouses like Superman, Wonder Woman, and Darkseid without even breaking a sweat. Naturally though, it makes sense why his powers would need to be toned down for a TV show. After all, if he's so powerful and can do anything he chooses, what would be the conflict in his story? And what would stop him from just becoming the ruler of Earth? He needs to have some kind of weakness to make the narrative more appealing and engaging to the viewer at home, though there's no doubt that Neil would figure out his kryptonite in some way or other. Perhaps he'd even toy with the idea of making Lucifer as human as he feels on the show. In the comics, that wasn't really the case, as you got the impression that he didn't have time for silly things like emotions and feelings. He had places to go and people to see. There was no time for frivolous things like kindness. In the TV series, however, you discover a more sensitive side to him.
Laugh like no one's listening, dance like you're standing on the corpses of your enemies.
Yes, he's still got that naughty sparkle in his eye and is more than capable of setting someone on fire. But Lucy has been shown to be more caring and compassionate to others. It's almost as if his time on Earth has made him more mortal in how he reacts to others as well. To be fair, it's actually a welcome change to his character, as it makes him far more likable, because honestly, the audience would have struggled to connect with an unfeeling and cold protagonist. I mean, even the Joker and Cruella were given more humane qualities in their solo films. Unlike in the comics, you get a hint that there's possible redemption on the cards for Lucifer, even if he was the former ruler of hell. Perhaps ironically, it gives you faith that the most evil being in the universe could actually turn out to be good in the end. As a storyteller, Neil understands this and would likely add more humanity to any TV version of the character, even if it proved to be a radical departure from his source material. And speaking of departures, it'd be fascinating to see how Neil would approach the intriguing relationship between Maze and Lucifer. On the show, they're on fairly good terms, even if Maze has occasionally done a little backstabbing of her own. Okay, maybe he did deserve it for being a lying scumbag to her.
I would never!
But in the comics, she was entirely devoted to Lucifer's cause, even being his lover. Maze worshipped everything about him and would rather give herself up for sacrifice than ever even think about going against him. She was a servant and he was her master, no question about it. It's easy to see why this detail was changed for the TV series, though. Had Maze been exactly the same as she was in the comics, it would have been difficult for Chloe and Lucifer's dynamic to develop and blossom into something more. The writers stripped the romantic element out of the hellish relationship and used it elsewhere while still trying to keep the essence of the characters at their core. Give or take a few things, obviously. But who knows? Maybe Neil would have experimented with a love triangle here to see if Chloe and Maze would fight for Lucifer's affections in the end. However, there is one relationship that he definitely would have changed, or at least looked towards the source material. And that's the one between Amenadiel and the Lord of Hell. On the show, the angel plays a typical big brother role. There's a little bit of dissension and argument between them at times, but Amenadiel just wants to do right by everyone, and he actually cares about baby bro. In fact, the two ended up helping each other on more than one occasion, including the time they banded together to rescue Charlie. But if you look at the comics, oh boy, that was something else. Amenadiel hated Lucifer, like seriously hated him. He worked on the side of heaven and wanted nothing more than to see the former angel destroyed for going against God in the first place. They were natural enemies until, well, Lucifer killed him. Why so surprised? He is the Lord of Hell, right? It's definitely a lot more morbid and darker than the depicted on-screen relationship, but it's highly probable that Neil would have wanted an antagonist like Amenadiel for his own story. And it's worth noting that he didn't actually create the character in the comics. That was all down to Mike Carey and Scott Hampton. Still, the whole angry angel versus dangerous demon vibe between Amenadiel and Lucy would have made for riveting TV, that's for sure. Fun fact, did you know that hell's worst punishment is making you watch non-stop reruns of CSI?
You just described torture. Trust me, I know.
Okay, it's a bad joke, but it's highly likely that Neil would change the crime procedural format that made up the earlier seasons of Lucifer, because that's not how the character was portrayed in the Sandman, nor his own solo series years later. This format was chosen for TV as it was a relatively easier sell for the networks. I mean, can you imagine the pitch for it? Every week, a tough-as-nails detective needs to solve an unsolvable crime, but she's helped by the devil himself, Lucifer Morningstar.
Murder, suspects, clues?
Sold! Knowing Neil, however, he would lean more into the mature dark fantasy genre, or even the Paradise Lost elements of the character's origins. Quite often, the Sandman acted as a metaphor for deeper discussions and commentary, while also not being afraid of showing horror to the readers. Look, we're not saying it would automatically be The Conjuring or Rosemary's Baby, but we all know that Neil would love nothing more than to add a bit of a fright factor to the character as well. He is the devil at the end of the day. You don't exactly want to see him sipping chamomile tea and snacking on toaster pizzas. It's about collecting souls, damn it. While Neil might get the opportunity to see his own version of Lucifer come to life in the Sandman series, we're more than happy to inject more of Tom Ellis' best devilish moments into our veins. Check out this video, and while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and stay awesome!